The Galactic Empire had long believed it was invincible. Across the stars, no species dared to challenge its might. But on a small blue planet in a remote part of the galaxy, something unexpected was about to unfold. Earth, isolated, peaceful, and primitive, was about to become the center of a conflict that would change the fate of the galaxy. It all started with a strange signal. The Empire's top intelligence officers were puzzled when a coded message was intercepted. The source was Earth. The message, cryptic and urgent. Read. The humans are unlike anything you've encountered. They are strong, clever, and capable of much more than you believe. You have been warned. Run. The Empire's High Council dismissed the warning. They had seen primitive worlds before. Human technology was far behind, and their history was filled with internal struggles. The idea that Earth posed any real threat was laughable. The council members laughed, their voices echoing in the Grand Chamber. Their leader, Grand Admiral Drax, was the loudest. Foolish. Earth is no threat. We'll wipe them out in a day. But there was one officer, Lieutenant Aria Kelt, who wasn't so sure. She had spent years studying alien species, and something about the message didn't sit right with her. She knew it was risky, but she insisted that they investigate further. Against the Admiral's orders, she sent her own team to gather more intelligence on Earth. As they gathered data, Aria learned of Earth's most impressive asset, its people. She read stories of their resilience, their capacity for invention, and their fierce independence. It wasn't their technology that was their greatest strength. It was their spirit. They didn't give up. They fought, even when the odds were impossible. Despite Aria's growing concern, the Empire's plans remained unchanged. The fleet was ordered to launch, and they began their journey to Earth. Aria felt a growing sense of dread as the massive ships cut through the void of space. She couldn't shake the feeling that the Empire was making a terrible mistake. Back on Earth, things were quiet. People lived their daily lives, unaware of the danger approaching. But there were whispers among the military. A few top generals had received strange messages, similar to the one intercepted by the Empire. They too were concerned, though they couldn't explain why. The signals weren't clear, but one thing was certain: something was coming. Earth's government scrambled to prepare, but without knowing exactly what they were up against, their efforts felt like trying to hold back a storm with their bare hands. They didn't understand the scope of the threat, but they were determined to fight. Humanity, despite its weaknesses, was known for one thing: survival. Lieutenant Aria Kelt stood in front of her ship's console, staring out into the vastness of space. The message had been clear. The humans were warned. But the Empire would not listen. And soon, they would learn the truth. The battle would be like nothing they had ever encountered before. The Empire's fleet entered Earth's atmosphere with terrifying speed, its warships massive and unstoppable. The people of Earth had no idea what was coming. No one had prepared for this kind of invasion. The military, still in the early stages of their defensive strategy, was overwhelmed by the sudden arrival of an enemy they couldn't even comprehend. The first warning came when the sky lit up with flashes of light, followed by loud booming sounds that shook buildings to their core. The Empire's warships hovered over major cities, their weapons charged and ready to fire. It wasn't just an invasion, it was an attack. In one of Earth's military command centers, General Thomas Blake received the first message about the enemy's arrival. His eyes widened as he read the report. "They're already here." His voice was calm, but his mind raced. Earth's defenses were nowhere near enough to face such an advanced enemy. The humans were not ready for this. Still, he had no choice but to react. He quickly ordered every available unit to mobilize. Back in space, the Empire's fleet began to descend upon Earth. Their commanders were confident. This would be an easy conquest. The humans had no chance against their superior technology. The ground troops readied themselves to land, and their ships prepared to bombard the cities below. The Empire's strategy was simple: destroy the human military and take control of the planet. But as the Empire descended, something unexpected happened. Despite being technologically inferior, Earth's military wasn't backing down. Humans had long been underestimated by the galaxy, and it was time to prove why that was a mistake. In the chaos, a young pilot named Captain Lara Carson, leading a small team of fighter jets, was the first to make contact with the Empire's forces. Her heart raced as she stared at the large, intimidating warships above. The other pilots in her squadron were nervous, but she kept her cool. "Stay focused," she ordered through the comms, her voice steady. "We don't have the firepower they do, but we know our skies better than anyone." They attacked without hesitation, charging at the massive ships, dodging blasts from the Empire's weapons. The human pilots were skilled, faster, smaller, and unpredictable. They were not the first to engage in space combat, but their tactics were unlike anything the Empire had faced before. Their jets moved with an agility that the Empire's ships couldn't match. The battle began, and the Empire's confidence began to waver. Humans weren't retreating or surrendering. They were fighting. The skies over Earth became a battleground, a chaotic swirl of energy blasts and explosions. Captain Carson's squadron managed to hit several enemy ships, knocking them out of formation. It wasn't enough to win, but it was a start. On the ground, General Blake coordinated Earth's forces to strike back with everything they had. Tanks, artillery, and infantry gathered in a last-ditch effort to fight the Empire's overwhelming forces. They didn't have the firepower to match the Empire's advanced weapons, but they used their surroundings to their advantage. The Empire had underestimated human resilience, and now they were about to pay the price. As the battles raged on both in the sky and on the ground, the Empire began to realize that Earth was not as weak as they had believed. They were not prepared for the human will to survive. They had come to conquer, but instead, they were facing a fight for their lives. The warning had been clear, but the Empire didn't listen. Now, it was too late. The sky was alive with flashes of light as the Empire's fleet continued its assault on Earth. The warships, powerful and relentless, fired their weapons on cities, reducing buildings to rubble. The humans fought back with everything they had, but it seemed like a losing battle. The Empire had superior technology and far greater numbers, yet the humans showed no signs of surrender. General Blake watched from the command center as reports flooded in. The human defense was under heavy fire. It was clear that the Empire's forces were better equipped. But there was something the Empire didn't understand about Earth's military. They didn't fight just to win. They fought for survival. Captain Lara Carson, flying above the chaos in her fighter jet, was the first to make a breakthrough. She and her squadron of pilots had been dodging enemy fire for hours, weaving between the giant enemy ships. Despite being outgunned, they used their speed and agility to get in close. "We're not going down without a fight," Lara said, her voice calm but filled with determination. Her squadron followed her lead, swooping in to attack the Empire's flanks. For every Empire ship that fell, the human spirits rose. The pilots' courage and skill started to wear down the Empire's confidence. They didn't know how to handle such unexpected resistance. The larger warships, so sure of their dominance, were vulnerable to the humans' hit-and-run tactics. The human pilots were relentless, targeting the weak spots in the enemy ships and taking advantage of their speed. Back on the ground, General Blake knew they were running out of time. The human defenses were starting to buckle under the Empire's strength. Yet the humans had an advantage that the Empire could never have predicted: their ability to adapt. As the Empire pushed forward, the human forces used the urban landscape to their benefit. Snipers took out key targets from high vantage points, while infantry units set traps that delayed the Empire's advance. They weren't just fighting. They were fighting smart. The Empire's forces, confused by the unpredictable nature of human combat, began to struggle. Commander Zakara, one of the Empire's top generals, ordered a change in strategy. She had never faced an enemy like this. The humans were relentless, fighting in ways that seemed illogical but were incredibly effective. Increase the pressure, Zakura commanded. We cannot let them regroup. But the humans had already begun to turn the tide. In a critical moment, a group of soldiers led by Sergeant Mike Harris found an enemy weak spot, a vulnerable communication tower in the heart of the enemy's command center. The team launched a daring attack, successfully disabling the Empire's communications network. Without coordination, the Empire's forces were thrown into disarray. Back in the sky, Captain Lara Carson's squadron capitalized on the confusion, launching a surprise attack on the remaining fleet ships. They hit with precision, disabling one after another. The battle was far from over, but the humans were showing that they were far from weak. They were resourceful, they were united, and they were determined to win. As the Empire's forces began to regroup, they realized that this would not be an easy victory. They had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. The Empire had come to crush humanity, but they were learning a painful lesson. The humans were not to be underestimated. The Empire's confidence was fading. What was supposed to be a quick and easy victory had become a brutal struggle. The humans, with their limited technology, had fought fiercely and forced the Empire to rethink their approach. The more the Empire pushed forward, the more they realized that Earth was not the weak, primitive world they had assumed. In the Empire's command ship, Admiral Drax paced back and forth. His mind raced as he watched the ongoing battle unfold on the screens before him. The reports were troubling. The humans had managed to disrupt the Empire's communications, and now their forces were starting to scatter. It was clear that this was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future of Earth. Why won't they break? Drax muttered, his fists clenched in frustration. His second-in-command, Commander Zakura, stood by his side, her eyes fixed on the chaos below. They're resourceful. They don't give up, she said, her voice calm but filled with concern. We thought they would collapse after the first wave, but they're adapting faster than we anticipated. Then we need to adapt faster, Drax snapped. We have the advantage, but they keep finding ways to fight back. Send in the heavy artillery. On the ground, General Blake had received troubling news. The Empire was calling in its most powerful weapons. Tanks, drones, and energy cannons were being deployed in massive numbers, and the Empire's forces began to advance once again, pushing deeper into Earth's defenses. But Blake was not one to back down. He had seen the strength of his people, and he knew they could survive. As the Empire's weapons rained down on the cities, Blake's forces moved quickly to adapt. We may not have the power they do, he said to his officers, but we have something they don't. Determination. We'll fight them wherever they go. Meanwhile, in the chaos of battle, Lieutenant Aria Kelt, the officer who had warned the Empire about Earth's strength, was having her own revelations. In her quiet quarters aboard the command ship, she spent hours reviewing Earth's history. The more she studied, the more she understood what the Empire had missed. She discovered something that made her blood run cold, something the Empire hadn't known. Earth had once been a powerful species, advanced in ways the Empire had never imagined. The humans had technology hidden away, knowledge lost to time, but still buried beneath the surface of their world. Aria found a clue, a fragment of ancient text in Earth's archives, mentioning a powerful energy source deep within their planet. A weapon, perhaps. Aria knew the Empire had made a grave mistake by underestimating the humans. Earth wasn't just a world to conquer, it was a world to fear. She knew that if the humans could unlock this power, the Empire would not stand a chance. She rushed to Admiral Drax with her findings. "Sir, there's something you need to know," she said, her voice urgent. "The humans are more than they seem. They have an ancient power, a weapon that we don't understand. If they can harness it, we're in real danger." Drax stared at her, disbelief written across his face. "You're telling me that this entire battle, this entire war, could have been avoided? We've already committed everything to this fight." Aria nodded. "Yes, sir. But it's not too late. We need to stop them before they unlock whatever it is they have." The revelation hit Drax like a punch to the gut. The humans were not just fighting for their survival, they were fighting to reclaim something ancient, something powerful. The Empire's mistake was clear now. They had misjudged Earth, and it might cost them everything. The battle raged on. Earth's cities lay in ruins, and the once proud Empire's fleet now faced a challenge they hadn't anticipated. The human forces, though outnumbered and outgunned, were relentless. Their ability to adapt, to fight with everything they had left the Empire in a constant state of surprise. The humans were not going down without a fight, and the Empire could feel the tide shifting. In the command ship of the Galactic Empire, Admiral Drax stared at the holographic map of Earth, his mind racing. The humans were not supposed to last this long. They should have crumbled under the weight of the Empire's firepower. But they hadn't. Instead, they fought with a tenacity that shocked him. "Send in the heavy artillery," Drax ordered again, his voice growing more tense. "We need to break them. This battle must end today." Commander Zakara nodded, her expression unreadable. "Understood, Admiral. We will crush them." The Empire unleashed its most powerful weapons. Massive energy cannons charge, their deadly beams cutting through the sky and blasting the Earth's remaining defenses. The explosions were so powerful that the ground trembled beneath the humans' feet. The Empire's tanks rolled over the remains of cities, flattening everything in their path. But still, the humans didn't surrender. On the ground, General Blake stood at the front lines, watching as the destruction unfolded. His soldiers were tired, bruised, and bloodied, but they were still standing. They hadn't given up, and they weren't going to. The Empire may have had superior weapons, but humanity had something more powerful, a will to survive. "We need to strike back now," Blake said, his voice filled with determination. "If we don't, they'll wipe us out." His officers nodded. The plan was simple. They would use the human terrain to their advantage, setting up traps and ambushes to slow the Empire's advance. Earth may not have had the same technology, but the humans knew their land better than any invader could. Meanwhile, Captain Laura Carson, leading her squadron of fighter jets, had an idea. Her squadron had been taking down enemy ships, but now they needed a bigger strategy. She knew that the Empire's communications were still weak after their earlier sabotage, and this could be their chance to land a devastating blow. "We can hit them hard," Lara said to her team. "There's a command ship not far from here. If we take it down, we might be able to turn the tide." Her squadron agreed, and they dove into the chaos once again, weaving between the Empire's larger warships. Their jets moved quickly, darting through explosions and enemy fire. With a burst of speed, they reached the Empire's command ship. Lara and her squadron launched a series of missile strikes, targeting key sections of the ship. The explosions were deafening. The command ship began to shake, and the Empire's forces were thrown into disarray. For the first time in the battle, the Empire's leaders realized they were losing control. "Command ship down," Lara shouted, her voice filled with exhilaration. "We've done it." But there was no time to celebrate. The Empire was far from defeated. In the distance, new ships arrived, reinforcing the Empire's forces. The battle was far from over. The humans had made a dent in the Empire's plans, but the Empire still had strength to bring to bear. As the battle raged on, both sides knew that this fight was more than just a war. It was a test of endurance, will, and strategy. And for the first time, the Empire was beginning to realize they had underestimated their enemies. They had warned them to run, but now it was the Empire that needed to consider retreating. The battle had taken a turn no one had expected. The Empire's grand plan to swiftly crush Earth was now in chaos. The human resistance, which the Empire had believed would crumble under the first wave of attacks, was showing no signs of stopping. Instead, it had become a fierce and determined force that the Empire was struggling to handle. Admiral Drax stood in the command center of the flagship, staring at the screens. The report from the front lines was grim. The humans had managed to take down the Empire's command ship and were causing havoc in the Empire's ranks. For the first time in this battle, Drax felt a flicker of doubt. How had this happened? He turned to Commander Zakara, who stood by his side, equally concerned. We need to finish this now. The humans are more resilient than we thought. If we don't take full control soon, they will regroup and make us pay. Zakara nodded. We will bring in everything we have. Our reinforcements are arriving, and we'll push them back. But we must act quickly. On the ground, General Blake was giving his troops their final orders. The Empire's forces were regrouping, stronger than ever. They had the weapons, the numbers, and the firepower. Yet Blake knew that the humans' greatest weapon was not their strength, but their will to fight. Listen up, Blake shouted to his officers. We may not have the power they do, but we know how to use our environment. We've seen how they fight, and now we know their weaknesses. We need to outsmart them. His words were met with determined nods. The soldiers around him were battle-worn, their faces grim, but their eyes burned with resolve. They weren't going to let the Empire win, not without a fight. Captain Lara Carson, still in the sky with her squadron, had a new plan. The Empire had reinforcements coming, and they were going to bring in even more heavy artillery. It was time to hit them where it would hurt most, at the heart of their power. We'll strike at their supply lines, Lara said, her voice sharp with determination. We take out their supplies, their backup, their energy sources. Without those, their new reinforcements won't stand a chance. The squadron was quick to respond, and together, they dove into the heart of the Empire's forces. They were small, fast, and deadly, attacking without warning and retreating before the Empire could respond. It was a game of cat and mouse, and the humans had learned how to play it well. Meanwhile, on the ground, General Blake's forces launched their own counterattack. Using the knowledge they had gained from earlier fights, they set up traps and ambushes that slowed the Empire's advance. Explosions rang out as Empire soldiers were caught off guard. Earth's soldiers fought with the knowledge that this was their last chance. If they didn't act now, they would lose everything. The Empire's forces were forced to retreat for the first time since the battle began. They had underestimated the humans, and now, for the first time, they were on the defensive. It wasn't a total victory for the humans, but it was a significant blow to the Empire's plans. On Earth, the message was clear. The battle was far from over, but the humans had proven something important. They had shown the Empire that they were not easy to defeat. They were fighting for more than just survival. They were fighting for their future. Admiral Drax knew this battle was far from finished. But as the humans regrouped, they had sent a powerful message. This war was not going to be as easy as the Empire had thought. The Empire's fleet hovered above Earth, its commanders tense and uncertain. The battle that was supposed to be a swift victory for the Empire had turned into an exhausting struggle. Human forces were fighting harder than expected, using strategies that caught the Empire off guard at every turn. What was meant to be an easy conquest now felt like a war of attrition, with no clear end in sight. Admiral Drax paced back and forth in the command center, his mind working furiously. The humans had proven to be far more resilient than the Empire had believed. They had taken down key ships, disrupted communications, and even managed to push back their forces in several key areas. For the first time in this war, Drax felt doubt creeping into his mind. We underestimated them, Drax muttered to himself. He stopped pacing and turned to Commander Zakara, who stood silently by his side. They're not just fighting to survive. They're fighting for something more. And we're losing. Zakara crossed her arms, her eyes cold and calculating. I see it. Admiral, the humans are proving to be far more dangerous than we gave them credit for. They have something we don't understand. They're willing to sacrifice everything for their planet, for their future. Drax clenched his fists, frustration clear on his face. We can't let them win. The Empire's reputation is on the line. If we fail here, it will send a message to every species in the galaxy that we are not invincible. Commander Zakara nodded, Then we must escalate the conflict. We can't afford to hesitate any longer. We bring in everything we have, every ship, every weapon. We crush them before they can regroup. But there was a hesitation in her voice, a hesitation that Drax couldn't ignore. Are we sure we want to do that? He asked, his voice quieter now. If we push too hard, we risk turning the entire galaxy against us. We're already fighting a war of conquest. If we go too far here, we may end up with more enemies than we can handle. Zakura's expression darkened. You think they're capable of defeating us? Drax shook his head. I don't know, but they're unpredictable. They've already shown that they can outthink us. What if they have more surprises waiting? There was a long silence as both of them thought about the humans they had been fighting. The Empire had assumed they could conquer Earth easily, but now they were learning that the humans were not just strong in battle. They were clever, resourceful, and relentless. Back on Earth, General Blake was well aware of the Empire's dilemma. He had seen the signs. The Empire was faltering. Despite the odds, humanity was pushing forward, adapting to every new weapon and tactic the Empire threw at them. Blake knew that the battle wasn't over. He knew that the humans had more to give. We've shown them that we're not afraid, Blake said to his officers. Now we show them that we can win. They think we're weak. But we've got strength in our numbers, in our unity. We can outlast them. Captain Lara Carson, who had been listening, nodded. We've hit them hard. But now we need to prepare for their next move. They'll escalate things, try to overwhelm us. But we know their weaknesses, and we can exploit them. Blake looked out at the battlefield, his eyes hard with determination. We've already proven that we can fight back. Now we need to prove that we can win. As the Empire wrestled with its own doubts, humanity was ready to face whatever came next. The battle was far from over, but one thing was clear: the humans would not back down. They would keep fighting, no matter the cost. The Empire had underestimated Earth, and now it was clear that this mistake could cost them everything. The humans were fighting back harder than ever, and despite the overwhelming firepower of the Empire, they were not giving up. Earth's soldiers, battered and bruised, stood tall against their invaders. The battle was no longer just about survival. It had become a fight for the future of humanity. Admiral Drax stood on the command bridge of the flagship, his expression grim. The reports were troubling. The humans had not only held their ground but had made significant progress. The human forces had learned to adapt and counter the Empire's every move. The battle had reached a boiling point, and Drax knew that the next few hours would decide everything. We cannot let them continue like this, Drax muttered, his fists clenched. We have to finish it now. Bring in all reinforcements. The humans will be crushed. Commander Zakura stood beside him, her face hard with resolve. We've already committed everything we have. If this doesn't work, we will have nothing left. The Empire will lose face across the galaxy. The tension in the air was thick. The Empire had been confident in their power, but the humans had proven that strength alone would not win a war. Drax knew this was no longer just a military conflict. It was about pride, about the reputation of the Galactic Empire. And if the humans won, it would send a shockwave across the stars. Meanwhile, on the ground, General Blake and his team were preparing for what they knew could be the final assault. The Empire's forces were regrouping, and they had more power than ever. But Blake's resolve was unshaken. Earth had fought too hard, and they had come too far to back down now. This is it, Blake said to his officers, his voice firm and steady. We've made them bleed. Now we finish this. We've learned their tactics, their weaknesses. We know what they fear, and we're going to use that to our advantage. Captain Lara Carson stood by his side, her expression equally determined. We've taken down their command ship once. We can do it again. We hit them hard, right at their center. We won't let them regroup. Blake nodded. He knew they didn't have much time. The Empire was preparing for a final push, and Earth had one chance to stop them. The humans had been pushed to their limits, but they still had the will to fight. And that, Blake believed, was something the Empire could never understand. As the final battle approached, the human forces moved with precision and unity. They fought not just for their planet, but for their people, for their future. The Empire had underestimated Earth's greatest strength, its determination to survive, to protect what was theirs. The sky above Earth was filled with the roar of fighter jets, the sound of warships clashing in space. The Empire's fleet moved in, bringing all of their firepower to bear, but the humans held their ground. They fought with everything they had, every soldier, every pilot, every resource. They were determined to prove that Earth was not a world to be conquered. Admiral Drax watched the battle unfold before him. The Empire's forces were overwhelming, but the humans were unyielding. The realization struck him hard. This was not going to be as easy as he had imagined. The humans were more than capable of defending their world. They were willing to die for it. As the battle intensified, one thing became clear. This was humanity's last stand, and they would fight to the bitter end. The final battle had begun. The sky above Earth was dark with the shadows of warships, while the ground below trembled with the force of explosions. The Galactic Empire had unleashed everything they had left. This was their last chance to crush the humans once and for all. But the humans, battered and bruised, were not backing down. If anything, they were fighting harder than ever before. Admiral Drax stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the holographic map of the battlefield. His forces were pushing forward, but it wasn't going as smoothly as he had hoped. The humans had set up traps, ambushes, and defensive lines that slowed down the Empire's advance. Each step forward felt like a struggle. "Why won't they break?" Drax muttered, frustration growing in his voice. "We have the firepower, the numbers. Why are they still fighting?" Commander Zakara stood beside him, her eyes narrowed as she studied the reports. "They're fighting for more than just survival. They're fighting for their future. We underestimated them. We thought they were weak, but we were wrong." Drax clenched his fists. "We cannot afford to lose this. If we don't win, the Empire's reputation will be destroyed. We'll lose everything." The battle raged on, the Empire's forces unleashing everything they had in a desperate attempt to crush the humans. Energy blasts from warships lit up the sky, and the ground shook with the impact of their weapons. But every time the Empire made progress, the humans found a way to stop them. They fought back with everything they had, using every last resource and every bit of their ingenuity. On the ground, General Blake led his forces in a final push to hold the line. The humans had been pushed to their limits, but they weren't giving up. They had already lost so much, but they refused to let Earth fall. The stakes had never been higher. This was the moment that would determine the fate of their planet. "We can't let them win," Blake said to his officers. His voice was steady, though his eyes were filled with determination. "We fight for our future. We fight for Earth. They will not take this from us." Captain Lara Carson, still in the sky, had a plan. The Empire's reinforcements had arrived, but their command ships were vulnerable. If they could take down the command ships, they could disrupt the entire fleet. It was risky, but it was the best chance they had. "Let's make this count," Lara said to her squadron. "We hit them hard, right at the heart of their fleet. We take down their command ships, and they won't be able to control their forces anymore." The squadron dove into the chaos, weaving between enemy ships and dodging energy blasts. They targeted the weak points in the Empire's fleet, focusing on the command ships that controlled the entire operation. The Empire's forces were beginning to fall apart, their once coordinated attacks now turning into disorganized chaos. In the final moments of the battle, the humans managed to land a decisive blow. One of the Empire's command ships exploded in a massive fireball, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The Empire's forces faltered, their leadership shattered. The humans had done it. They had turned the tide. Admiral Drax watched in horror as his forces began to retreat. The humans had fought back with everything they had, and now the Empire was losing. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The humans had won. Earth had survived. The Empire's invasion had failed. And the humans, against all odds, had proven that they would never be conquered. The battle was over. The Empire's forces had retreated, and Earth's skies were now clear of the invaders. The massive warships that had once filled the heavens were now drifting away, crippled and scattered. The Empire had come to Earth with the intent to conquer, to crush humanity under their boot. But in the end, it was the humans who had stood tall, and the Empire that had been forced to flee. General Blake stood among the ruins of what had once been a thriving city. The ground was littered with debris, the remnants of buildings reduced to rubble by the Empire's relentless bombardment. The cost of victory had been high. Many lives had been lost, and the damage to Earth's cities was severe. But the humans had endured. They had fought with everything they had, and they had won. "We did it," Blake said quietly, his voice filled with both relief and sorrow. He looked at his soldiers, their faces tired and worn, but their eyes still burning with pride. They had done the impossible. They had defeated the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Captain Lyra Carson walked up beside him, her face streaked with dirt and exhaustion. "We lost so much. But we're still here," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the battle they had fought. "We stood against the Empire, and we didn't back down." Blake nodded. It wasn't just about fighting back. It was about showing them that they can't just take what they want. Earth isn't weak. We're stronger than they ever realized. In space, the remains of the Empire's fleet drifted, battered and broken. The once mighty warships that had filled the skies with terror were now nothing more than floating debris. The Empire's commanders had failed, their plans in ruins. The humans had proved that they were not to be underestimated. Admiral Drax, aboard the last remaining flagship, stared out at the fading remnants of his fleet. His face was pale, his expression a mix of disbelief and anger. He had never imagined that the humans could fight back so fiercely, that they could turn the tide of battle in their favor. The Empire's reputation had been shattered, and he knew that his failure would not be forgiven. "We lost," Drax said, his voice hollow. "How could we have underestimated them?" Commander Zakara, standing beside him, said nothing. She too was in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. The Empire had come to Earth with a single goal: to conquer. Now they were retreating in defeat, their forces shattered and their pride broken. Back on Earth, the celebrations were bittersweet. The humans had won, but at a great cost. The war had taken a heavy toll, and the planet would need years to recover. But the victory was theirs, and it would be remembered as the day Earth stood against the galaxy's most powerful force and emerged victorious. As the sun began to set over the horizon, General Blake looked out at the sky, his heart heavy with the weight of the battle. The fight was over, but the work was just beginning. Earth had survived, and now it would rebuild. The message had been sent. The Empire had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but they had found something unexpected. The humans had fought for their planet, for their future, and in the end, they had proven that no one, no empire, no force, could take away the right to survive. The galaxy would never forget what had happened on Earth, and humanity would never forget the price they had paid to secure their future.